One of my favorite videos that I put out in 2022 was when I talked about the hidden gems on my bookshelf. Well, I wanted to do a similar thing at the end of 2023, and what I decided to do was ask some of my absolute favorite booktubers for their hidden gems. I wanted to find out their underhyped or underappreciated books, book series, or authors within the science fiction and fantasy genres. And they did not disappoint. This video is going to blow up your TBR. If you don't already subscribe to these channels, I've linked them in the description below. I'm going to save my selection for the author that I think is very, very underrated and underappreciated in SFF. I'm going to save mine till last. But without further ado, I hope you enjoy this video with the underappreciated, underhyped books, book series, and authors within the science fiction and fantasy genre.
Underrated science fiction? That's a loaded question since I haven't read as much as probably many of the people who are viewing this video have. But for me, guys, it may seem like it's gotten popular now, but I still have to go with the Sun Eater Saga by Christopher Ruocchio, because it feels like it is starting to pick up steam now, but for 3 years now I've been bagging on people pick up this series because I feel like it is the best unknown sci-fi series going out there, and Christopher Ruocchio deserves to be a household name in the sci-fi community because this is one of the best character studies I have ever experienced. You know, we're headed into book 6 now, so you don't have to wait that much longer. He's writing the final book in the series right now. It's an amazing, amazing series, and again, I think he's way more talented than any of the modern sci-fi readers that I have read. So, I mean, this guy is just completely just blowing the doors off of what I have come to expect in character study science fiction, and this is without a doubt the best out there. So yeah, again, it might seem like it's not as much underrated anymore on the BookTube community, but again, I feel like it deserves to be in so many more people's hands than it has thus far.
Hi Josh, thank you so much for allowing me to join your channel. So one of the most underappreciated books in the BookTube community is without a doubt The Name of the Wind by Patrick Rothfuss. Now that's obviously a joke. My choice is going to be The Combat Codes by Alexander Darwin. Now this is actually one of my favorite reads of the year, and I almost never hear anyone talk about this book. If you're looking for a novel that is beautifully paced, blends fantastical and science fiction elements together, has a brilliant underdog, a really good meta, and satisfying plot twists, and isn't 1,000 pages long, then check out The Combat Codes. Also, the author is super nice.
Hi Josh, I'm here to sing the praises of author Jo Walton, and in particular 2 of her best novels, 2003's Tooth and Claw and 2011's Among Others. Tooth and Claw, which won the World Fantasy Award, is Walton's delightful reworking of a 19th century Anthony Trollope novel about British social customs, mores, and manners, but with dragons instead of people. And Among Others, which won both the Hugo and Nebula Awards, is Walton's love letter to the speculative fiction works and authors she read as a teenager that shaped who she became as an adult, and also to the public libraries that introduced her to those formative works. Fans of Roger Zelazny will find a lot to like in this novel. And Walton has written a blog on Publisher Tor's website for many years that contains some of the most insightful commentary to be found about fiction, speculative or otherwise. I encourage you to check her out.
Hello Josh, thank you for inviting me to share with you a fantasy or science fiction book or series that I feel deserves more love. And I immediately knew what I was going to pick, and that is Wars of Light and Shadow by Janny Wurts, which begins with Curse of the Mist Wraith. This is an 11-book series that is going to be complete in May of 2024. And I believe that it ought to be spoken of in the same breath as series like the Malazan Book of the Fallen and Realm of the Elderlings, because of its vastness, but also because of its depth. This is a very, very special series that I hope more and more people will discover.
Hey Josh, this is Matt from MattsFantasyBookReviews. Thank you so much for having me on your channel. And for Underappreciated Fantasy, you know, if you would have asked me this a year ago, I probably would have had a different answer. But today, the easy answer for me is The Wandering Inn. It's quickly becoming one of my favorite fantasy series of all time, not just because of the length of it, and I do love some chunky books. This is by far the longest fantasy series of all time, and is being written at a pace to put Brandon Sanderson to shame. You know, it's free on the Wandering Inn AndrewsWizardlyReads.com, so you don't have to pay for it. It's incredible. And what starts off is this nice little cozy fantasy in the realm of like legends and lattes, turns into, within the first book, into these kind of darker horror elements, and eventually becomes this grand, sweeping, epic story that almost can't be rivaled in fantasy. I mean, that covers multiple continents and hundreds of characters, and it's just wonderful stuff and an amazing intro to progression fantasy, lit RPG, and web serials. So, that's it for me. Thank you so much, and happy reading to you.
Hey Josh, it's your pal Jonathan from WordsinTime, and I have an underappreciated science fiction book for you. And that is Deathstalker by Simon R. Green. A friend of mine, Elan, pitched this book to me with a great line. He said, "If Hyperion is fine dining, then Deathstalker is a greasy bucket of fried chicken." They're both great in their own right. And I thought that was a fantastic description of Deathstalker because it is a sci-fantasy sword and planet space opera that features a delicious mix of larger-than-life characters, over-the-top sci-fi ideas, gory action, and entertaining dialogue. If you're in the mood for a sword-in-hand, tongue-in-cheek sci-fi adventure, then I highly recommend you check out Deathstalker by Simon R. Green.
Hey Josh, Joanna here. You asked me for a hidden gem, and I'm going to go with Electric Forest by Tanith Lee. Published in 1979, this sci-fi standalone is set on a futuristic planet called Indigo, where the government is controlling reproduction and therefore making sure that all human beings are born without physical disability. Yet every once in a while, someone is born biologically by accident, as is the case for the main character we follow, Magdala, nicknamed Ugly. She's considered a social outcast until one day she's approached by a handsome man who claims he can make her beautiful. On the onset, this book seems to deal with beauty standards, self-preservation, and consciousness transfer, but the story unfolds into so much more. Tanith Lee's prose is imaginative, and yet it remains intriguing all the way until the last page, so I hope that you enjoy it if you pick it up.
Hey Josh, AndrewsWizardlyReads here, and I just want to say thank you for asking me to be a part of this video. Now, you asked me to kind of recommend either a book / series or author that I think is kind of in need of attention, and I decided to go with all three. We've got books, we've got series, and we've got a single author, and this is Andrew D. Meredith, the author of Needle and Leaf and the Collation Saga. Andrew is an amazing self-pub author who is writing kind of in a, I'm going to say noble bright classical style of fantasy. So if you're looking for that kind of classic feel in your fantasy, with maybe with Needle and Leaf some Slavic kind of feel, or just some epic kind of fantasy feel, you can't really go wrong with Andrew's books. I highly, highly, highly recommend his work.
Hey friends, it's Tori from Tori Talks. Josh, thank you so much for having me on this video. So I'm going to bring you guys two series that I absolutely love that I think are incredibly underrated and need a lot more attention. The first one is The Collation Saga by Andrew D. Meredith. This is a classic slow burn with a payoff. There are holy orders, there are paladins, there are mercenaries, and in the background is this dark evil that is growing and threatening everything that the characters hold dear. It has some of the most in-depth world building you will ever find, and if you are looking for a classic vibe story written for a modern audience, this is the series for you. The second one I want to bring up is Until the Last by Mike Shackle. This is a grimdark military fantasy trilogy, and it is now my standard for grimdark. Oftentimes dark military fantasy can really get out of hand and everything just kind of seems brutal and gratuitous after a while, but Mike Shackle walks that balance so incredibly well and gives us a beating heart in the midst of this horrific war and brings heroes out of the ordinary people that are left behind.
Hi, I'm Nikki, the Obsessive Bookseller, and today I'd like to make a case for The Waking Fire by Anthony Ryan. Everybody, including myself, loved Bloodsong by this author. So why isn't anybody talking about this series? It's a flintlock fantasy with steampunk and clockwork elements, and some of the most grand adventuring I've ever been on in a book. It's like Indiana Jones type adventure with the most breathtaking discoveries of anything I've ever read. And on top of that, it has dragons. very wild and bestial and unpredictable and dangerous, which makes everything feel so much more high stakes and exciting. The magic system is reminiscent of Sanderson's Allomancy, but instead of metals, it's dragon blood that people are able to use to manipulate the world. This series is such a favorite of mine that it's in my top 3, and I hope more people decide to give it a chance because it is amazing.
Hi, I'm Bryce with ShelfCentered, and I would like to thank Josh, first of all, for letting me give my underappreciated, underhyped fantasy recommendation for you today. It's probably an author that you've never heard of in your life. It's Brandon Sanderson. Just kidding. What I wanted to give you was Courtney Schaefer. Courtney Schaefer with, this is actually book 2, The Tainted City, in the Shattered Sigil trilogy. The first book, The Whitefire Crossing, is just one of the most fun fantasy books. It utilizes magic just constantly. I love that there's, your low fantasy and your high fantasy, and this one's just like constant magic, just infuses every page. You're constantly talking about the magic. And then on top of it, Courtney Schaefer is a mountain climber, and the Whitefire Crossing is a lot about the Whitefire Mountains in this world. You just have this main character that loves climbing, and you just feel all of it throughout this book. It's amazing. It's so much fun. Breathtaking at times. Absolute blast. I think you'll love it. So let me know when you do.
I'm Ben from BooksWithBenghisKahn, and the underappreciated SFF series I want to spotlight is one of my favorites, and that's Adrian Tchaikovsky's 10-book Shadows of the Apt series that I have arrayed behind me here. Now this just combines some of the fast-paced, high-stakes grittiness of John Gwynn's Faithful and the Fallen with the immense creativity and world building of Brandon Sanderson. We have the geopolitics of kind of a World War II situation, which is the platform for Tchaikovsky's building all of these different human races who have kind of taken on some characteristics of a particular insect or arachnid over time that they've bonded to and given them special abilities or a certain cultural outlook. And it just was a roller coaster ride of a series that moved really quickly with impactful character arcs throughout the whole series, amazingly suspenseful action, and a very thought-provoking overarching plot as well. So deep on themes, and gave me everything I could possibly ask for out of this big fantasy series. So it's an epic fantasy that is just widely underread since Tchaikovsky's much more well known for his sci-fi. But if you love those big, chunky fantasy series that also kind of move quickly and are accessible, this is a perfect pick for you.
My name is John Minton, and this is Talking Story, and I am above the legal limit of excitement that Josh included me on this. Let's get right to it. This is my pick for underappreciated, underhyped SFF on BookTube. This is the 1996 first novel by Mary Adoria Russell, The Sparrow. This is a first contact story. Should you read it, just check the hardware on this bad boy. It won the John W. Campbell Award for New Writer, the Arthur C. Clarke Award, the James Tiptree Award, the British Science Fiction Association Award, the German Award for Sci-Fi that I can't even pronounce. This is an amazing first contact story. It's about a Jesuit priest that goes to a far planet and loses everything: his faith, his ideology. He's physically scarred, he's emotionally scarred. What a journey. The characters are great, the story is great, and if you love it like I do, there's a follow-up. We love follow-ups on BookTube. Have you read it? You should probably read it. Check it out. Thanks so much. My name is John Minton, and this has been Talking Story.
Hey Josh, and hey everyone, Chris here from the channel Christopher Navo. There's a couple books and series and authors that I can put under the underhyped and underappreciated category, but I think my number one go-to answer to this question always tends to be The Long Price Quartet by Daniel Abraham. Now, of course, this is a 4-book series, and it starts with A Shadow Summer. The series as a whole is a slow burn presented in Abraham's well-crafted but approachable prose. Each entry is compelling, character-focused storytelling at its best. It's set in this Eastern-inspired world. The plot is filled with political intrigue, dark magic, and so much originality. I highly recommend this series. I truly believe you guys are in for a unique experience. Happy reading. Thanks for having me on, Josh, and cheers.
So what is my choice for underhyped, underappreciated science fiction or fantasy book series, or author? I'm going to pick an author, and I'm going to pick Guy Gavriel Kay. Yes, he's very famous. Yes, a lot of people love him, but I do not see the love for him that we should, especially on BookTube. He is fantastic. I've read 4 books by him so far, and he is just a true master that can, frankly, do just about everything. He's got one of the best writing styles this side of Robin Hobb. He is a master of pacing, impeccable, perhaps the best world building I've experienced in the fantasy genre. And hey, people always talk about there's not enough fantasy standalones. Well, have you read GGK? Just about every one of his books are a standalone. So my choice for this video, the most underappreciated author that I've read in the fantasy genre, I think, is Guy Gavriel Kay. Hey, I hope you enjoyed this video. Thank you all the booktubers that contributed to this video. It really was a great way to wrap up the year for me, is to do a nice collaboration with all of you. I appreciate the time that you took to film your portion of this video. If you like this video, please like and subscribe. You can also find me on Twitter and Goodreads. I'd love to interact with you there. As always, thank you for watching. Until next time, goodbye.